Welcome to 7 Minutes from Central Europe, a program brought to you by the Central European Office of American Jewish Committee. Today, I have the great pleasure and honor to have with us the Ambassador of the Republic of Lithuania to Poland, His Excellency, Mr. Eduardas Borisovas. Mr. Ambassador, it's a pleasure to have you.
Good morning, Sebastian. Good morning to everyone.
Thank you for joining us for this short interview. And I want to start by not only asking you about the recently adopted law by the Lithuanian parliament, by the same as the law on goodwill compensation, but I want to congratulate your government and your country for finally, you can say, closing the important issue of compensating the victims of the Holocaust. How do you think this recently adopted law just a few days ago is different from those other restitution laws adopted by Lithuania in the past? How will that change, the new law will change the status of Holocaust survivors and their families in Lithuania?
Thank you, Sebastian. I think that first of all, we need to congratulate ourselves because it was a really courageous step made by the government first and then by the parliament, same as to adopt this law, which solves, in fact, the outstanding issue of compensation for the individuals. Before, the agreement covered only religious communities. And this was solved a decade ago, and it was also accepted with pleasure, I would say, and was good for our relations with Jewish communities, with the State of Israel. And now I think the final step actually to compensate those remaining few remaining actually victims of Holocaust and their descendants, actually to compensate for the lost property. Of course, law is complicated to explain all the details of it. It would take a bit longer time, but it's about 37 million euros, and applications need to be made during the next year, or by claimants, or how to say, on behalf of claimants. So this is quite limited in time, but that was agreement with the Jewish organizations, and I think that it will be sufficient time to cover all necessary needs.
Apart from issues that are important for Lithuania and its Jewish community, there are issues that are of key importance to all of us in Europe and beyond for the transatlantic community, broadly speaking. And of course, what I have in mind is Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Today, as we speak, the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, is in the US with an official visit, meeting with the US President Joe Biden, speaking at the Congress. How do you see the future of Ukraine's ambitions to join NATO and the European Union? Of course, we're hoping Ukraine will win this war. How do you see their prospects for joining these two major alliances?
Thanks for asking this, because a Ukrainian issue of war against Ukraine launched by Russia definitely is of primary importance for us in the region. As if we speak about membership of Ukraine to NATO or the EU, speaking about the European Union, Ukraine was granted candidate status. Now it will be some technical job to be maintained, and what is important that Ukraine will need to definitely fill in some requirements, actually, which are according to the common EU law. But at the same time, we understand the urgency of situation. We understand the necessity of Ukraine to have clear guarantees of becoming a member of the European Union. So there are no doubts and no way, how to say, some doubting member states that Ukraine needs to be boosted in this way, and membership of Ukraine in the European Union should come as soon as possible. We see very strong, very determined state, which stands for values of shared by the Western world and capable of defending itself. So in this sense, we need to think not about giving some aid to Ukraine, not to give some assistance to Ukraine or defend Ukraine, but we need to think about that Ukraine joining NATO could strengthen NATO, could strengthen considerably. And in this sense, actually, even for the United States, looking from the United States perspective, having Ukraine and Finland in NATO and Sweden also, actually, we expect that this process will be finalized by the Lithuanian, by the summit in Lithuania this July. That Sweden and Finland will become NATO members. Actually, we see totally changed geopolitical and security infrastructure and geopolitical situation in the eastern part of NATO. What that means? That means less care about our security, less money spent on behalf of some particular countries for NATO capabilities, and very strong actually presence of strong military armies actually on the eastern flank of NATO.
You have just mentioned the upcoming NATO summit to take place in Vilnius, and it tells a lot about the role, not only the potential, but the actual role of Lithuania in the international arena. Your foreign minister, Gabrielius Landsbergis, over the last couple of weeks, if not months now, has been underscoring the need for the international community to think about, to conceptualize the question of an international tribunal to prosecute Russian war crimes. Can you maybe elaborate on that a bit, and maybe tell us if there is if steps are being successfully taken to build a coalition of the willing countries that would support Lithuania's suggestions and urge.
If to speak about special tribunal, that's the idea shared by some NATO and EU member states, and shared especially those in the Eastern Europe. Actually, they support this idea, and for us, it is important that these crimes, which were perpetrated in Ukraine, should not go unpunished. War crimes will be were committed by individuals. This will be individual responsibility, and we have nothing against that. Those who committed those crimes will be persecuted. But we also want to have responsibility of Russia, of Russian ruling class, who actually launched this aggression, who started this aggression against Ukraine, and whose members are responsible for that aggression. So definitely, international criminal court doesn't cover these issues, and it would be difficult actually to in this constellation, in this how to say a structural limitation, for example, to have all this how to say really implemented. So why there is idea of special tribunal against Russian ruling class, who is really responsible for this war.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. We have just heard the voice of Lithuania, maybe not the biggest country in Europe, but one with a big heart and big muscle. Ambassador Borisovas, big thank you. And we hope our listeners will join us in 2 weeks.